Hey everybody, so I've been to the doctor this week and I'm kind of on light duty, so I won't be able to add the garden beds and do some of the stuff that I expected to be able to do, but that's not going to stop me from adding so many updates because the baby geese are turning 2 weeks old and they are growing significantly. The ducklings are starting to feather in and I really want to document that. And then it's getting to a point in time where I really need to consider which ducks I'm going to raise and which ducks I'm going to cull. I'm on less than an acre of land. I cannot keep all 21 of these adult ducks plus 10 that I'm currently growing. Plus, I have over 65 eggs in the incubator, and even if a third of those hatch, that is a ridiculous amount of ducks to keep permanently. As you know, we do eat meat here, and that means that some of these ducks are going to be used to feed our family and go into our freezer. It's just the nature of the beast here. Now, of course, we have the option to sell female ducks. I never ever sell drakes because most people do not want drakes and it is not worth it. And honestly, sometimes it's stressful selling any kind of animals or anything to other people for me. I have a little bit of social anxiety, so I do get nervous and just normal social settings, believe it or not. I know that's hard to believe with me being on YouTube, but if you notice, I'm always behind the camera and rarely in front of it. So, with that being said, what you're seeing here is one of the drakes from the most recent cross that I have created. And now that I need to really seriously decide who to cull, I know one thing's for certain. We have way too many drakes out here. We have this Khaki Campbell cross drake, and while he is a good drake, just doesn't have any qualities that I really need for my homestead other than being docile. The issue is he gets competitive with the other drakes, and since he doesn't have anything that I'm really looking for, there's not really much that he has left to offer that can benefit us. Now, everything's muddy. This is out by the water area, so just be prepared to see a lot of mud and mess. This will change when the weather dries up here. It looks like it's going to rain again already. Just how it is this time of year. Once summer hits, this area is going to transform into a garden area. It'll be really cool. So here's that cross. This guy is 1/4 flying mallard and 3/4 Welsh Harlequin. But you can definitely see some mallard features in him as well as the Welsh Harlequin features. Now, we ended up with some mallard cross drakes. They were half flying mallard, half Welsh Harlequin hen. Their father had flew into the pen and bred with the Welsh Harlequin ducks, created crosses, and when we bought our Welsh Harlequins, we were given 3 drakes for free. And they grew up, they were all different color patterns, and so we allowed them to breed with some of our hens, and we hatched out those babies before eventually culling off those drakes because they were pretty aggressive and large compared to our small hens, so it's just not the direction that I wanted to go with long term. Especially being on limited space, I have to be really careful and be very serious about what I choose. There's no room for error. There's no room for me to take a large amount of time to decide. So once they become old enough that they can provide food for our family, that's it. Now, this drake right here, he is about 4 months old, and he is looking pretty good, pretty interesting. I am curious how he is going to grow out. The issue is that I cannot have 4 to 5 drakes when I only have 21 grown ducks. That is way too many drakes. I really need about 1 drake for every 20 hens, but to be safe, however, I can use 1 drake for every 10 hens and it won't cause a huge issue, but the issue is that I have a Welsh Harlequin drake right here and they are pretty serious when it comes to breeding. So they are pretty serious when it comes to breeding And by that I mean they will breed all 20 hens and they will fight the other drakes and they will get on the hens when the other drakes are on them, and it risks drowning the hens and everything else. So that is something to be aware of when you have a Welsh Harlequin breed. You really need to be careful about how many drakes that you have, and on top of that, you really need to cull out the drakes that are overly aggressive. With these drakes already being semi-aggressive breeders and just having a lot of vigor, there's just no room to have too many. That can be really dangerous for your hens really fast. They'll start missing feathers on the back of their neck. They can drown, they can get hurt. It's just not fair to them. So that's something to really consider. Now, this hen over here is Snow, and she is one of our younger Welsh Harlequins, and you can tell she doesn't have as much gold on her as the other hens, but she is starting to get more of a bronzy golden color. Now, I know that she's absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to keep her because she is an excellent hen. She's docile, she's calm, she's sweet, she is pretty, even though she is a bit lighter than I would like for her age. Now, she will continue to darken up because she is under 1 year of age, so that's something to consider. You can see her and her sisters back there like to lay their eggs in the mud, and that is a bit of a mess. However, I have seen Miss Snow here get into the nest box up here and lay an egg, so she'll also dig around and kind of hang out. So that's a good sign. She might have some mothering instincts after all, where some of the girls are seriously lacking. As you can see, the lack of nest and the eggs being laid randomly in the mud versus the nice pretty nest being laid right here in this IBC container where it's safe from everyone, including the other flock members. Now, these two girls are a little bit older, and they're also silver-faced Welsh Harlequin. We live in the United States, we're in Texas, so what we can get our hands on is a little bit different. It was harder to find the gold phase, and when I first started, I didn't truly know the difference. But I have to say, I actually really love the silver phase, and these girls have nice, beautiful golden tones on them, and I really love them for that. I really love that about them. I love their coloring. I love their nature. The only issue is I don't know how they will do as moms because they haven't had the chance to hatch out eggs naturally. This spring, if I think they can handle it, I might consider it, but as some of you may know, I haven't had the best experiences with our ducks hatching out their own eggs because last time a couple of our girls hatched out their own eggs. I made a video of it, candled the eggs, waited for them to hatch, and had to go rescue the babies because the first couple of babies to hatch left the nest without their mom, and one of the drakes that we used to have, Cotton, who we actually ended up culling for being overly aggressive, went out and attacked the babies so bad they were missing all the feathers on their back of their heads, and it was early morning, so they must have hatched in the middle of the night, and that was just not a good experience for us. So I've been incubating the eggs and hatching them myself ever since. So if they prove to be able to sit on a nest, I'll let a couple of them try it out, but I am terrified. However, for me, one way to have an efficient homestead, if you're not in need of eggs, which I'm not, I have over 10 dozen eggs in my fridge right now, so I can afford to let them sit on a nest for a month without running out of eggs. And if you're in need of eggs, letting them grow birdie may not be the best idea for you because they will not lay while they are sitting on a clutch of eggs. However, that's another reason to have an incubator. I just use some cheap ones. I use one that cost me $60. It's normally about $120 in the store. Those are the Farm Innovator incubators, and I really like that one, but I bought it used and it's worked out well for me, but the humidity doesn't stay up as high. And then I use one that's a little styrofoam incubator, and it's cheap and I like it, and it actually works well compared to some of the more expensive ones I've seen, which I don't understand, but it's what works for me. One day maybe I'll think about investing in a cabinet incubator, but it definitely probably won't be while I'm still homesteading on less than an acre. That's just too many ducklings for me to try to raise in a small area. So since the theme of this video is kind of why I'm choosing to do the things that I am and to start culling, I'm going to start showing you some more reasons of why I want to keep certain ducks and why I don't, and a few examples. Now it might get confusing because you can see a lot of these are the most recent hatch and they're kind of clumping themselves together. So here we go. Here is that drake from earlier, and you can kind of see his coloring. I'm getting to the point where I really have to choose, but their feathers are still growing in, so they still look really funny. And of course he's not gonna look up to standard of Welsh Harlequin because he's part mallard. So this is kind of my own breed that I've been working on. Mixing a couple of different breeds to see what I can get, find a color that I like, hens that lay. They're a little heavier, so they're good for meat, but they lay like the Welsh Harlequins. That is my goal. I also want to work on a nice color that I enjoy, but also don't want anyone that's overly aggressive or just completely unfriendly. We are a family homestead. I do include my family in what we do. They enjoy helping out. My children are 4-H, so it's important for them to learn these things and be able to work with the ducks. And if they're flighty and freak out every time that the kids are near, it's just not going to work well for us. They need to be able to help out when they can now that they're getting older. And on times like this when I'm having a few issues of my own and I need rest, it really helps to be able to say, boys, can you go out and take care of the animals? So if you're homesteading as a family, that's something to consider is, are your children able to take care of your animals when you're unavailable? Oh, I hear you. So if you don't know, that loud quacking sound is one of our young hens right here. And the hens make a loud quacking sound. That telltale duck quack, that is always going to be a hen. And the males make a really funny raspy sound. And so it almost sounds like they're whispering. So I say whispering ducks is a male, loud quacking sounds are female, because my females like to chat and gossip and hang out with each other. I can definitely tell when someone approaches. So now another drake that I'm considering keeping, where are you, is this guy. He also has some really nice coloring, and he's a little more docile than the other one. So I'm trying to figure out which one I like the best. Now this guy doesn't have as much mahogany on him as this one over here. You can see this one has more of the Welsh Harlequin mahogany, and this one has more of like an interesting leopard-like print. So I am curious on how he's gonna grow out. I'm just not sure, but time is ticking and I will have to make my decision really soon, because the truth is I really cannot afford to have more than 2 drakes. One for my pet pen and experiments, and one that I'm very serious about. And as you know, the one I'm most serious about is my Welsh Harlequin drake, and that is this fellow right here. He is gorgeous. I have bred and culled and bred and sold and bred and sent to family to be a pet and bred and sent to freezer camp for 3 years trying to get the perfect drake, and for me this is him. So I'm keeping this guy. I just have to keep my numbers down because whew, does he like the girls, let me tell you. Here is another one of my hens. You can see the nice golden color coming in on here. So sweet, one of my Welsh Harlequin girls, and I really love her. This is one of my oldest hens that I have that I bred. That's the Khaki Campbell cross, and she was bred with a Welsh Harlequin that may have had mallard in him. He definitely had some incorrect mallard striping right down the center of his head. That was cotton. He was aggressive. He was bigger than a Welsh Harlequin should have been. He had terrible coloring, and he had to go. So he went to freezer camp, and this girl here is one of his offsprings, and it's so funny that she looks so much like a mallard hen, except if you see her in person, she is significantly smaller. I actually think that her and this baby here, they are smaller than our Welsh Harlequin hens, which you may actually not be able to tell with her being a bit closer, it looks like she's bigger, but she's actually significantly smaller, which means that she lays really, really well, large white eggs compared to her body size. She has excellent feed conversion, and she's really sweet. So if I wanted to, I could pick up these girls and they wouldn't bite, they wouldn't freak out too bad. So that's something to consider. Now, they don't like to be picked up, so I try not to bother them, but they're really nice. And this one right here, one is a drake right there, has kind of a greenish bill, the one kind of plucking at its chest feathers, and the other one next to it is a female. And I have not decided on keeping those, but I'm thinking maybe not. Those are questionable for sure. Now, there's one back here, and you can see her wing kind of sticking up. She's behind this other duck, so it's hard to see. That is what I believe to be angel wing. It's often caused by a deficiency or too much protein or lack thereof. It can, from what I've seen, it's kind of confusing to me still. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what causes it. But since I feed a high protein feed specifically made for ducks that has plenty of niacin, I'm not really sure what's going on. The one thing I know for sure is that is not something that I want bred back into my duck flock whatsoever. So unfortunately, she is going to be one of the hens that gets cold, and you can kind of see her wing, instead of going sideways, it's sticking right up in the air, kind of like a big triangle. And that's just a no-no for me. I don't know what's causing it, but yeah, I don't want that to be in future generations. So unfortunately, she has to go. Now back here, we have a couple of lighter color girls, also from that Mallard Welsh Harlequin cross. And you can see the one in front looks more Mallard than Welsh Harlequin for sure. You can definitely see the Mallard in her, but the lighter colored chest feathers of some of the Welsh Harlequins. So it's interesting how her feathers were lightened up by her mom's genes. And the one in the back, you can definitely see is a cross. That one is 1/4 flying mallard, 3/4 Welsh Harlequin, and it really shows. She has the mallard eye stripe, but she is so light in comparison. She has the golden tones, but also the lightening of the Welsh Harlequin. So it's really interesting to see how her genetics have played out, and I actually really like this bird. She's really pretty. The only thing that I did notice that's a little concerning for me is on those crosses, the hens, like this one in particular, they look a little back heavy, unusually heavy compared to the other birds. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that. But even though I love her color and her temperament, I am concerned that she's not going to be good for breeding because she is strangely and oddly shaped. You can kind of see what I mean. That's just a big back end, and it goes well down to her feet. So I'm just not sure what her health will be like, or even if she'll be capable of breeding and having a decent fertility rate. That's something to really consider, which breaks my heart because I really want to keep this hen. I love her color and I love her temperament and everything else. But like I said, guys, we are homesteading, so if a duck's not going to lay eggs well and she's not going to be breedable, there's really no sense in us keeping her. I'm hoping that with the babies that I just hatched, I will get more duck hens who have this really awesome and beautiful pattern. Now, her sister behind her, pattern's slightly different, but it is very similar. The main difference being is that this girl is lighter and her bill is already turning black, where this girl's a little darker and she definitely has orange bill and feet, and I'm afraid that that gene might stick. As you know, I do like the black bills, especially during crosses, so I can kind of tell them apart from other breeds and say, oh, that one has Welsh Harlequin because the darker feet and bills. Now, if you look at this little girl right here, she almost looks like a khaki Campbell duck, but she's not. She's also part of that mix, Welsh Harlequin and Mallard. Now, when she was a baby, she had a mallard pattern, but she was very chocolate in color. And her and her sister were the only two chocolate ducklings that I had from that hatch. And in previous hatches, I had the same experience where the chocolate ducklings grew up to be females. And this is pretty common. If you breed a hen that has chocolate coloring to a silver Welsh Harlequin drake, you'll be able to tell males from female based off their color at hatch, which is really cool. In my experience, the males, depending on what you choose, if it's a mallard cross, the males will have a mallard pattern and the females will have a lighter color yellow with a black dot on their head. However, it really depends on the genes that you're using and the ducks that you use. Now, this particular hen came from different parents, so her crosses were a little different, and she came out looking like a chocolate mallard, and I knew from the get-go that she would likely be a female, and I was correct. And the ducks that I currently have that had the same pattern and also looked like mallards but were chocolate in color instead of yellow and black have also turned out to be female. So that's something that's really interesting, and I think it makes it a lot easier when you're on a small homestead or a homestead in general, telling males from females at an early age. But this doesn't apply to all duck flocks. You really need to know your genetic makeup of your ducks and the color patterns, and that's not always easy to learn. There are so many variations. I spent a lot of time studying and learning the different types and trial and error breeding and figuring out which ducks had which patterns, and I'm still learning. So don't feel discouraged. Don't think you're incapable or that it's something that you have to learn overnight. It's not. People spend decades learning these things, so be patient with yourself. And if you're really interested in something like that and going more in depth than just having some nice ducks, I think it's something fun to look into and consider. Now, I have also discovered that some of the ducks have very interesting patterns. This one ended up being a girl. She had a black and yellow mallard pattern at birth, the one in the very front, and the one, not the one up against IBC containers, but the one between the chocolate girl and the one at the IBC container, she also had a yellow and black mallard pattern. And it was really interesting to see how they developed. Now, like I said, the fathers, there were 3 different options, and they were all mallard crosses, and they all had completely different patterns. So I have no idea which one fathered which duck. My job is to determine which duck hens to keep, and honestly, I have no idea when it comes to the darker hens, which ones I'm going to keep. I do know I want to keep both chocolate hens, at least one of the lighter hens. If the other light hen becomes clear that she can breed, no problem, and she lays well, I'll keep her. But crunch time is here, guys. Spring is coming. These birds, they eat a lot of food. It's not cheap to raise them up, and I just can't keep up with the amount of food that they're eating while still trying to grow other birds out, plus having the space to do so. So now you can kind of see this girl's wing a little bit better and why I'm not interested in keeping her in our flock, because once this deformity gets in, that's it. It's stuck in there, and you don't actually know what's causing it. If there's some sort of deficiency, if there's some other kind of issue that I'm not aware of. So it's definitely something to be on the lookout for. Here on this one, it's also female, and you can see kind of the blocky shape, and it has more of a mallard shape, I would say. She's smaller and her shape is interesting. Now, this is another chocolate female back there, and the cool thing about these is they actually have, and you can't tell from where I'm standing, but they actually have that interesting bluish teal color that the silver phase Welsh Harlequin hens have on their wings. So that's a sure way for me to tell, if I ever do get more khaki Campbell hens, that these girls are definitely not khaki Campbell hens. That's some pretty bright blue on their wings. So here we are, just another overview. There's 1, 2, 3 hens there, 4, 5, 6, but this one in front will be cold, and there's 6. Plus my Welsh Harlequin Drake, who's dipping his head in and drilling into the mud. Goofy ducks. They're so funny to watch them dig up crayfish and everything else. This girl will be kept. Here's one of the girls that I'm not particularly sure about, but she has excellent bill and feet color. This drake will probably not be kept, and one of my older hens who I adore. All three of our Welsh Harlequin hens right there, 3 of them. There's still one more, and these are just having the time of their life over here, working together to dig and play in the water. It's so much fun to watch them. Our chocolate girl's heading inside, but here's one of them, and it's much more up close so you can kind of see her feathers and everything else. This one does not have the blue wings that the other one have, but still very pretty. She does have like the greenish color to her wings, but it resembles more of the mallard color than the Welsh Harlequin. The other girls that turned out chocolate had more of that brighter teal blue. She's very small. Bye, sweet girl. I can see everyone kind of heading inside, so I guess that means it's time for bed and they're tired of me filming them for now. So I'm going to come in and close their door and let them go to bed. But since one of the main questions I had was always, how do I figure out who to cull, what I'm doing, I figured I'd go over my flock because I had to come out here anyways and start making decisions about who I was going to keep and who I was going to cull, because I have way too many drakes, but also might have too many ducks depending on what my goals end up being. And so right now I know for sure I have 3 to 4 drakes that are going to have to go, and maybe more if some more start feathering in and reveal to be drakes, because like I said, I have 10 ducklings that are on the cusp of being 4 weeks old. They're in that 3-week range, and they're quickly going to start showing their feathers, and I do not hear very much quacking, and about 3 weeks is when they start quacking. That means I probably have a lot of drakes, which is a relief because this hatch was really hen heavy, which made it difficult to choose, you know, who to keep and who not to keep, especially with these gorgeous colors. So if you're like me and you're still trying to figure out homesteading and raising ducks and culling ducks, here's just my overview of what's going on in my own flock, and I hope that kind of helps you in figuring out exactly what you want to do in the future with yours.